South Park Snow Day is a game that I was not anticipating at all. I'm not a fan of the South Park TV show. I've never seen an episode of it in my life. All I know is that I like to talk about new games on this channel, and this was a new game, and I was bored today, so I figured I'd make a quick review about it. So I'm going to review the game for you guys. I'm going to show you some raw gameplay, but before I do that, you should hit that subscribe button. I talk about video games all the time on this page, day one reviews like this that are typically longer and more in-depth, but I do other video game discussions as well, and I talk about movies and TV shows, so consider subscribing if any of that seems interesting to you. But enough with this intro, let's talk about South Park Snow Day. So first things first, this is a first impressions review. I've been playing the game for several hours now, but just keep in mind, I'm not an expert in this game and I've yet to see everything that it has to offer. And also, all the gameplay footage that you're seeing is from very early in the game, so there's not going to be much game spoilers in this video, and I'm not going to talk about the story at all. So what is South Park Snow Day? If you don't know, it's a third-person action game where you can play solo with bot teammates, or you can play online with other players. The game has a lot of roguelike elements to it. Each run feels different, even when playing through the same mission several times, which I did do. Each time you play through a mission, you select different card upgrades and abilities, but so does the enemy faction. So for example, you could play through one mission and the enemies could keep turning into vampires or some shit like that. But then you could play through the same mission again, but this time they could keep turning your weapons into pool noodles. But also your abilities and upgrades are different each time as well. So one run you could have laser eyes, or the second run you could just charge at people like a bull. So what do I dislike about South Park Snow Day? Usually I start with what I like, but for this game in particular, I want to start with the negatives, because my first impressions of this game were negative, and then they got more negative, and then they got even more negative. But then they ended up being positive, at least a little bit towards the end. So first off, I don't like the humor, but that's just a me thing probably. I've never watched South Park, like I mentioned before. I kind of knew that the humor wouldn't be for me, and in this game, I didn't find the jokes or the humor really funny at all. But I have no idea if this represents the show South Park well. If you like the show South Park, let me know. Is the humor in the show more funny than this? Next is combat. Combat, especially when playing solo, is honestly kind of horrendous. Both melee combat and ranged combat feel like they have absolutely no punch to them, no kick to them at all. It's hard to tell if you're even making contact with the enemies when you're fighting them. Half the time, the only way I knew I was actually damaging the enemies was by seeing numbers pop up and seeing their health bar get smaller and smaller. Even your abilities have a lack of oomph to them, like your laser eyes and your charging bull ability like I mentioned earlier. Those are just a couple of them. But those ones, you're shooting your laser eyes at people and it doesn't feel powerful. And honestly, it's kind of hard to tell if you're even making contact when you're doing that either. Also, this didn't bother me much because, again, I'm not a fan of the show, but I feel like it's worth mentioning. There's not much of the main characters in this game. You don't spend that much time with them at all. Again, doesn't matter much to me, but it might to you. But while I was playing through my first few runs solo, I was practically miserable. There was just nothing fun about this game. I couldn't wait to finish gathering my thoughts so I could just put out this game review and then put the game away forever and never think about it again. But then when I tried out multiplayer and I played with people online is when the game started to make it apparent to me that it wasn't a complete waste of $30. And now I'm going to get into the things that I liked about the game, and that's multiplayer pretty much. Multiplayer makes this game fun, at least in some ways. When you and an online player have different abilities and they're bouncing off of each other and you're using them to take down hordes and bosses and you're doing teamwork, it can be fun. It's also worth mentioning that this game is actually pretty difficult, at least it was to me. I died several times playing it solo, but playing it solo, it was just miserable. Again, it wasn't fun at all. But when you're playing online with other people and you're seeing your teammates go down around you and you keep going down and you're all desperately trying to revive each other, it was fun. It had this frantic, fun aspect about it. And I'm going to be honest with you, if I didn't have to stop playing to make this review, I'd have played at least a couple more runs with the group that I was playing with. So now I honestly can say that I'll give this game a few more hours of my time after I make this review, see if it starts to click with me a little bit more. But honestly, I doubt that'll last for more than just a few more hours. If I end up putting more than 10 hours into this game by the time I never play it again, I'll be genuinely surprised. But again, once I played multiplayer, once I realized that this game had the capability of actually being fun. It went from just being negative in my mind to being mixed. So again, this isn't a completely bad game, but I can't really say I recommend this game to you either. I don't want to tell you it's worth buying. I don't really want to tell you that it's worth playing. All I can say is take my opinion, listen to what I said, maybe watch a few other reviews, look at the gameplay that's being presented to you, and just decide to yourself if you think it's worth $30. But anyway, that's my quick and brief thoughts on South Park Snow Day. Have you played this game yet? If you have, let me know what you're thinking about it in the comments. And if you haven't played it, let me know if you plan to, or are you going to ignore it completely. Either way, I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Once again, consider subscribing, and thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far.